important lessons from that. And the second one is in terms of the petroleum rights themselves, are they limited to that specific region of South Africa in the Free State, or are you looking to other areas as well? So if I can have another last one is regarding the business models. You spoke about change in the business model at some point. How important is it to be flexible, especially when you're starting out, so that at least you can let the data guide you, or as you move, so you can be flexible and act fast in execution? So yeah, thanks.
Those are excellent questions. If I could just ask you to re-ask the first one. My line was a little bit dodgy. I didn't hear it properly.
The first one was regarding the spec. Why that method of going forward, and what are the lessons in that?
Okay, the spec on the helium itself. So the reason that we needed to get the specifications for helium that we do is because you can't liquefy helium unless it's at an incredibly high purity. And if we weren't going to liquefy everything, then we wouldn't be able to get the prices that we do. You'd only be getting about a quarter of the selling price for the helium, and that, yeah, we, being opportunists, we thought, let's rather go for the full hog. Let's spend more. Let's spend the bigger check and get the right equipment, and be serious about this. Let's not be half-hearted as we go into this project. It needs to be world class in every respect. I'll get onto your last question, because I think that's a fascinating one. It's absolutely critical that you're flexible in terms of how you go about building up a business, especially as an entrepreneur. Yeah, my rule of thumb is that you can have the most well-conceived business plan, and as you start to roll it out, within 6 months, you'll probably realize that your business plan has changed entirely. And the one thing that you didn't actually think was going to make any kind of revenue whatsoever probably ends up being your cash cow. And your main original idea isn't there anymore. So it's very important that you're very flexible in terms of how you structure the business, but not that flexible that you end up just spinning and chasing your tail. You need to stick to your guns in some core fundamental principles. I mean, that's a journey that Purple went on, and I feel very closely linked to them because my brother was with them right in the very beginning, and I witnessed that journey firsthand. And it was the kind of leadership at that team that whilst they were innovative and they were coming up with these great ideas like easy equities and the fractional ownership concept, which was inspired and genius. They stuck to their core principles and executed on the main business model. So yeah, there's a little bit of both. It's not just one. You've got to stick to the original purpose of why it is that you set up that business in the first place. But you have to listen to the market. It's easier to sell something that the client wants than it is to try and sell the client what you want to sell them. The latter never works. Does that answer your questions?
Yes, but I think the first one I think maybe I wasn't clear. It was regarding the spec.
The spec on the listings.
Yes, yeah.
Why was it? Okay.
On the listings. Okay. Why that purpose and other listings there?
Okay, so the why we went the spec route was because the gas company wasn't ready to be listed. And so we thought that we would gain some time by listing the SPAC first and then reversing the gas company into it while we were getting the gas company ready for the reverse takeover of the SPAC. The mistake behind that was the fact that the SPAC product wasn't ready for the South African market was not ready for that kind of product, and still today is not ready for that kind of market. You look in the United States, you look in the UK, they're well versed with SPACs, and SPACs are very liquid, and SPACs do an inordinate amount of work. In South Africa, no one ever took to the SPAC, and I think if you read up about us on ShareNet, it still talks about us being a SPAC. It's we've got this stigma branded on us. We've got this SPAC tattoo on us, and there's no amount of laser treatment that we can do to get that blessed tattoo off us. But hopefully in time, people will start to call us more a helium company than a SPAC. But it is what it is. It's not recommendable in this country. If you're going to do a SPAC, do it on the NASDAQ.
I've got two questions that have been sent to me, and I'll probably throw in a third one of my own. The first one is from Geleto. She's asking, do you have plans for exploring more natural gas around South Africa? I don't know if you want me to read all of them, or you're going to shoot them one by one.
I'll do one by one. Oh, actually, that was the second question that I forgot. Sorry about that. So, yes, we do have rights in Evander. The production right that we have is for that area in the Free State, and that is the only area in the Free State that we have. So it's 1,800 square kilometers, or approximately 4% of the whole of the Free State. Those rights are not movable, they're not transferable, but we're quite happy with the rights where they are, because that is the sweet spot following on the asteroid strike. So for us, we're quite happy with that patch of land over there. We don't at this stage have any intentions of going beyond where we are with Evander and with Virginia, and the reason for that is that there's so much there that taking on more is it'll just detract from what we already have in Virginia, which is just an amazing asset. So no intentions to go on land grabs and increase acreage.
Awesome. The next question is, what are the other uses for helium in South Africa besides party balloons? And I'll just throw in my question as well. Do you cringe when you go into the party store and there's people using helium to fill up balloons? Do you just cringe and say, guys, do you know what you're letting go of?
Actually, if I had to tell a secret, if I could, I'd probably go behind the counter and open up the valves and let the helium vent. It's just more demand for the product. But I don't do that, just in case anyone's wondering. No, so I don't cringe. I mean, helium has its purpose, and if people want to put them in balloons, eventually there will be a willing buyer, willing seller price, at which point you just can't afford balloons anymore. In terms of uses of helium specifically in South Africa, they're quite limited. Helium is predominantly used over here for deep sea oil and gas diving. So they breathe a mixture of 98% helium and 2% oxygen. That's one of the biggest uses in our country. But then they also use it for ultra high end welding. So the kind of welding that you can't do with either acetylene or carbon dioxide or argon. And then other uses are obviously MRIs. I mean, everyone needs an MRI. All the hospitals have MRIs, and MRIs, you can literally only turn them on with liquid helium. So those are the primary large uses. And then if you follow me on Twitter, you may or may not have seen there are also universities here like WITS that have things like quantum computers and particle accelerators, and you can't operate a particle accelerator, and you can't operate a quantum computer without helium. And so, there's lots of uses for helium in extreme high end physics. Those are the primary reasons. And then obviously there's the Hyundai helium balloon for marketing out in the Fourways region, which, just as an anecdote, I think that's about 2 million rands worth of helium in there. That was my estimate. So so those are the primary uses in South Africa.
Awesome. We have multi-bagger, Tavang.
Good evening, Tez and Ivan, and also to the CEO, Stefano.
Good evening.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well, and you? Hopefully you've been enjoying.
Yes, I just have a question on, I think there was a question around ESG, but I just want to ask on the E part in terms of the environment. Because there's been previously plans prior to tap into the oil and gas, the shale gas in the Karoo in the Free State. My question is around, what are you guys doing differently? Because, I mean, you are the first, I stand to be corrected, the first actually gas company to tap into that. So what sort of techniques are you using that are successful? And then secondly, how did you actually convince the DMR and go ahead and his colleagues to actually award you the license?
So the license was awarded to the previous owners of the company. And that was done in 2012. I can't necessarily speak as to how they got the license. But if we look at all of the paperwork, they literally put forward a work program and they made an application. And the application sat with the DMR, or at least PASA, for I believe it was 2.5 years before they eventually opined. But that voting in favor was only after a process of involving 5,000 interested and affected parties and asking them their opinion, and the 5,000 all came back with no comments at a town hall meeting. So that was how the license was granted in 2012, and the reason that no one came back, and even when we redid our environmentals for the pipeline, the reason that no one complained or raised any objections, and some of the magic of what we do differently is contained in cognizance of the environment and the way that we approach it. The important thing is that we don't frack. There's no fracking, and there's no capability of fracking in our field. And the reason for that is because you only frack sandstone, because sandstone is a very shale. You only frack shale because shale is a very tightly held gas in a very dense rock. And so you need to shatter it or fracture it in order to release the gas. In our case, we don't have that at all. The rocks underground are already shattered and cracked. So all that we have to do is that we drill using the exact same equipment that you would for a water borehole in your garden. We use the exact same stuff. So nothing specialized, no imported equipment, no giant rig. We don't have massive blowout preventers. We just use simple Washington heads. It's all fit for purpose. And that means that our footprint in terms of when we extract is tiny. It's absolutely tiny. To put it in context, our wellhead occupies a total area of about 3 meters by 3 meters. Now you compare that to some of these monstrosities overseas where you've got that mechanical donkey going up and down, and we've got none of that. We blend really well into the environment. So it's the E part in ESG is paramount for us.
All right, thanks.
Thanks for that, Tabang. Ivan, I hand back over to you.
Thank you so much, Chaz. I see there's no other speaker, anyone requesting to speak, and I don't know, my DMs are not open, guys. I'm not sure if it is the DM in my was anyone sending me questions on my DMs was I can't open them. But I think that's gonna be the end of the space, because we asked for an hour and we got more than an hour with the CEO of Renergen. But before we end the space, any closing remarks, any statement you want to make to your retail investors? Like some majority of people here, your retail investors, the people who believe in the vision and the mission that you guys are on. So before we end the space, any closing remarks in regard to that?
Yeah, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the retail investors out there, and let me explain why. Look, I'm obviously passionate about the Renergen story, but there's another thing that I'm particularly passionate about, and whenever I get the opportunity to stand on my soapbox and preach, I do. To my mind, one of the easiest things that we can do in this country to get this country on the right track, at least economically, and something that doesn't require any political will, is to support the small to medium cap space. And the reason for this is small caps will, if you look per R1 million of market cap, small caps employ significantly larger number of people than the large caps do. If you look tax paid per R1 million of market cap on the small end versus the top 100, small caps pay significantly more tax than the large companies do. If you look at the impact on economic growth, small caps have a much larger impact than the large companies do. The large companies typically tend to have a lot of their money overseas and their projects overseas, whereas the small caps are all domestic. And so from my side, it's more an enormous thank you that there are people like you that are on platforms like Easy and Purple and platforms like that, and that you guys are going out and trading and creating liquidity in the small cap space. If there's one thing that as a country we need to do, is that we need to support these small caps as much as possible. And there's tangible evidence to show this. I mean, if you look, the ASX, 84% of the entire market capitalization of the ASX are in companies with a market capitalization of less than 5 billion rand. That is a staggeringly impressive number when you consider that 90% of the JSE is in the top 100 stocks. There are 360 stocks on the JSE, and yet 100 of them, the top 100 of them, command 90% of the market capitalization. That's just wrong. It's the small caps that are going to grow the economy. The big ones aren't. And so, the more and more people that we get involved in the small cap space, like they did in Australia turned their exchange around. It was also similarly top loaded with the top 100 stocks. Now they've got 2,500 companies listed on their stock exchange. They have 84% in the small cap space, and that changed in 1992, and Australia has not had a recession since 1992. I think China is the only other country in the world that matches that, and that is predominantly by virtue of the fact that it's retail investors such as your good selves who are out there supporting the small cap space. So that's the end of my sermon on that one. It's more just a thank you, because it's the guys like you that are going to make the difference to the South African economy.
Thank you so much for that. Stas, do you want to make your closing remarks, and then I'll speak after you?
I've got a really fantastic story to tell at my next bride. The first time I heard the story, I was so fascinated, and this was a webinar that was hosted by Easy Equities last year. I don't know if you remember it, Stefano. I was part of the audience, and I was truly fascinated by the story of Renergen. And I think I did send out a tweet for people to look into it and to see how far you guys have gone, or from where you began till now. It's extremely fascinating, and I really love innovation. That's the one thing that keeps me driving, and I only invest in companies that live on innovation. And when this deal between you and Purple Group, this tokenization of your commodity came up, I was really excited, more especially to speak with you as well today. And I'm hoping for the best for Renergen as a company, and I'm really hoping people out there do a lot of research into you, and hopefully can get the conviction to commit, because I truly do see good things coming. But that's me from my side. Thanks again for joining us on this conversation.
Thank you. Really appreciate that, and absolute pleasure to be here. I'm always happy to attend.
Thank you so much from my side. I'd like to appreciate your willingness to join the space and be part of the conversation and be part of interacting with us, the retail investors, the guys who are in the middle, the guys who are trying to make it and put whatever little bit of sense we have into companies like yours, companies like People Group, companies, I can name those companies, but we try to put the little money we add into you guys, because we believe in the mission and the vision that you guys have, and the willingness for you guys as well to come and speak and engage with us. I really appreciate that, and I hope with this space series that I'm hosting, and Taz will be co-hosting with me, we're going to be able to engage with more CEOs that have a similar vision and similar drive that we do and we have as retail investors. So for my side, I really appreciate your engagement. I really appreciate your openness to come and speak to us and share the story, share the vision, share your journey and how you took Renergen from where it was to where it was. For me, for those who have been following my YouTube channel, they know how much I've been preaching about this company and how much I believed in this company. So for me, as an investor of this company, I really appreciate you coming. And for everyone who joined into the space, guys, thank you so much for joining. As I said, I'm planning to host the CEO space twice every month, and I will have amazing CEOs to come and engage with you guys. But from my side, I appreciate Stefano for coming and opening yourself to engage with us. I truly appreciate that.
Yeah, likewise, and thank you very much for listening to our story.
I think we'll all get that.